Thank you, Jeannie. I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for being on the call. We've got management. We've got representatives from Deloitte, I believe, on the call as well. And so let me just open this meeting up. First thing on the agenda is to approve the minutes. Hopefully everybody's had an opportunity to read those minutes. Are there any comments with respect to those minutes? Okay, nope. Hearing none, do I hear a motion and a second to approve them?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Terrific.
Well, if I could interrupt for one moment, let me take stock of what trustees are on the line, so we have that for the record. We have Walt Rakowicz, Ted Brown, Don Cotner, Brandon Short, and Mark Gambley. Okay, thank you.
I'm also here. Sorry, I'm also here. My name is Nicholas Rowland. I'm the chair-elect of the Senate.
Right, yeah, I just wanted to make sure for the record that we had enough trustees for a quorum, which we do. Thank you.
Welcome, Nick.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Jeannie, anything else before we move forward? We good?
Yes, I think you're all set.
All right, perfect. Dan, back to you on the roles and responsibilities matrix.
Yeah, Walt, just real quick, I think we are on track and we're covering all the items we need to in February. And just a reminder for all of the members that we have moved several items that we used to cover in session are now informational items, and those were in your board in package of information. And we would be glad, any administration, Joe or I or Gary, to answer any questions you might have with respect to the informational items.
Any questions on roles and responsibilities? Okay, great. Hearing none. Joe, I think you're going to give us an update on the management letter.
Yeah, and actually, Walt, thank you. This was we shared this draft with you of the Deloitte's management letter back in the fall meeting. And as you look through this is all access security issues in the IT area. So Michael Cubitt and Don Welch are with us, and I think Michael is prepared to address most of the comments. I'm actually going to turn to him.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, I think in all of these areas where they're either sort of remediated by reviewing these business processes or ensuring that we have the appropriate sort of accountability in place. Joe, I don't know if we, just from a protocol standpoint, if we go through each one or just a general statement here.
In the past with financial matters, I've gone through each one, but with some of these having common themes, if you would like to group them, I think that would be appropriate.
Okay, good, thanks. So I think in a lot of cases around sort of user access and user termination, right, it's ensuring that various business systems and units are sort of following university policy. So it's good to be able to partner with Dan's team, right, to sort of help bring some of those awareness so that we can remediate appropriately. In some of the other cases regarding password access, it's ensuring that the IT professionals across the university are using best practices in using appropriate passwords, and that the configuration of those systems are appropriately secure, so that we're not putting the university at risk as well. The last is around identity in general, and this is one of those areas that we'll be working on an ongoing basis to ensure that the university has a modern identity and access management system, and that we're actually tying these systems back and marrying them appropriately with business process. So I think that covers all of the, at least all the.
Michael, this Walt, I do have a question for you. I mean, and I know you're going to give us an update pretty soon on this, but obviously you guys are changing a lot of systems at Penn State, as are most companies these days, and but yet you've got all of these other audit things that you have to do. Can you do all of these things while you're retooling the entire system? I mean, is that like making tweaks to a 747 that's in flight? I mean, can you do all of these things when you're changing all the systems you're changing?
Thanks, Walt. I appreciate sort of your sensitivity, right, this to sort of the complexity of what we're trying to accomplish here. You know, I believe we have the talent within the university, right? We have some of the best IT professionals in the country sort of working in this, and we have enough outside expertise that we can bring in when needed to help with this lift. I think the challenge around this in the fact that you know, we're merging systems and we're sort of pulling technologies together. Sort of following best practices and architectures that exist today, it's really it's imperative, quite honestly, for us to be able to do this. It has a significant impact not only to the university as far as processes, but fundamentally it has an impact on our students and our various constituents when the systems are difficult to access or the data that's within those systems is not up to date.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and hopefully in your summary, you're also going to talk about resources. I continue to be interested in whether or not you have resources to pull off all the things you need to pull off.
Thanks, Walt.
Let me ask the committee. Joe, well, first of all, Joe, are there any financial deficiencies that you want to cover? And if not, I'll open it up to the committee for questions.
There are no financial deficiencies. I'll just add on to what Michael addressed. You'll recall we actually talked about the Penn State Health comment, which was the last of the 8, and that was considered a significant deficiency at the Penn State Health audit level. That has since been addressed and will be discussed in additional detail, I believe, at the Penn State Health Board meeting next week. But it has been addressed, and I would just remind everybody there was a significant deficiency noted in that audit, but that did not raise to the level of a significant deficiency at the university audit level.
Right. Okay. Great. Anybody on the audit committee have questions with respect to the deficiencies in the management or the Deloitte management letter? Okay.
None.
All right. All right. Thank you, committee. And Joe, anything else you want to cover on that letter?
No, I think Michael summarized it well.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Joe. And Dan, can you bring us up to speed on what looks to be an unbelievably positive internal audit assessment report?
Thank you, Walt. Yes, the information is included, and I'd like to just go through that, a little bit of the process and what happened. You know, as I discussed with the committee over the last year or so, we are, internal auditors are required every 5 years to go through an external validation or assessment of our operation so that when we issue our reports, we can say they are in accordance with internal auditing standards. So we had undertaken this, and the way we had chosen to do it with your knowledge and approval was that we would do an internal assessment, which we do internal assessments every other year. So we do 2 internal assessments in the intervening periods between the 5 years, and then we did 1 here and had an external team of 3 auditors from the Big Ten come in and review our assessment and do some various work. The 3 individuals were the directors from Michigan, Wisconsin system, and then a IT director from assistant director from Michigan State. So they conducted the review. They were on site here at the university. Their background is included in Appendix C, the individuals that did it. The work they did is in various appendices. And where I would point to was in page 4 of their report, there's a summary of the opinion of the assessment team. And that opinion is basically, there's 3 levels, and we achieved the highest level of generally conforms with the standards, which is very good. That means there were no significant type deficiencies of any type. They then went on to list on page 5 their various observations while they were here. They noted various strengths and then that they had, and we really took those to heart and various, then there were opportunities for enhancement. They had 4 items that they noted. And I had responded, and this memo is not included here, but in a separate memo to David Gray and to you, Walt, about the actions we would take with respect to those 4 items. 2 of them are in the IT arena, particularly in a look-forward position as we become more centrally oriented with respect to our IT processes and are bringing on new systems of things that we should consider, which we currently are and have been working with Michael and Don actively. And then there are a couple other items that one of the things that they noted was with respect to follow-ups and the trying to reduce the length of time for some of our audit follow-ups, the outstanding audit issues. We had a great December report where that number went down, but we also have taken other actions with respect to just trying to make sure we keep up to speed with that, including David and Nick reissued a memo that reminding all of the deans and chancellors and administrative heads of the need to do an 18-month, complete everything within 18 months, if not sooner. And we also took the step that David and Nick agreed to this to be, as we get closer to the 18-month deadline, I had always sent out the quarterly reminders that the report was going to be issued and we would be doing quarterly follow-up procedures. David and Nick agreed that as an unit or an area comes up with to the deadline, the quarter before they're about to hit their deadline, that instead of the email coming from my office, it would come from David and Nick's office. So we're going to be doing that as we hit March 31st this coming year. So that's a proactive step we've done. And then there was the last item that they noted was continued focus on role of culture when performing audits. And that was, if you recall, we have changed the way we do our college and campus audits with respect to doing limited scope with respect to detailed procedures and a more focus on looking at the tone at the top and culture items and issuing memos with respect to that. So they liked that approach and they wanted us to continue that. So that was a quick synopsis of what they noted. Any questions on that? I have a few more items I want to cover, but I'll take a quick break and see if there's any questions.
Questions from the committee on the assessment report? Well, all I can say, Dan, is that it's a really very positive report, and congratulations to you and the team. Keep up the great work.
Thank you, Walt. They did include that Appendix B, which was the key words, and while it's not a much as for my own personal satisfaction and gratification, what I really enjoyed was being able to share this with the team in the office, and it gave them a good sense of pride, and a lot of them have posted it on their bulletin boards and in their work areas. So I think that was a side benefit from this to really reinforce to the team the importance of the work they're doing. And then we had our internal report. That's included. I wasn't going to spend any time on that other than to give a lot of credit to the staff person that did that. She spent quite a few hundred hours doing this, and it was a great learning experience, and she did tremendous work on this area. So thanks. I know, Walt, you took part in the interview, and a lot of the executives around the room here, including David and Steve, Joe, Ed, you were involved in the interview, so I want to say thank you to all the individuals that took time to talk with members of the external team.
It was my pleasure.
That's all I have then on that one.
Okay. And Dan, should I turn it over to Michael? I thought you mentioned a minute ago that you had one other thing to cover, but maybe I misheard.
No, I just wanted to get back to the end of the report, which was the internal part of it. So I'm good.
Okay, great. All right, thank you again, Dan. Again, great work. Michael, can you give us an update on IT?
Sure, absolutely happy to. Thanks, Walt. In fact, Don is here with me, and the first couple of slides in that deck are really Don's and for him to share with the committee here.
Yeah.
Hi, Don.
Thanks. Hi, Walt. So the first slide, if you remember, our strategy is to identify the high-risk systems and then focus on protecting those systems. And we have been doing that, and I'm happy to say that the status that's in the deck, since it's 2 weeks old, is changed for the better, that we've been making some progress there. And really, we've only got about 3% of the systems that I'm really concerned about and pushing hard on. And about 18% total are red anymore. And those are ones that I'm pushing on. I have support from senior leadership of the university to knock systems off the network who we deem to be an unreasonable risk. And I've been using that stick to get action. So we're making progress this way on securing those systems. The next slide talks about our process maturity overall. And we've moved from the defined region up to the managed region. And what we have now is we're tracking security metrics, giving those feedback on those metrics to unit IT, especially unit leadership, and we're seeing a significant response from units as they're able to understand how they, what their security posture is, and more importantly, how they relate to every other IT unit. We've come up with a formula for a cumulative security score, and we tell each dean, chancellor, or VP where they rate proportionally compared to the others. And as an example, within 2 weeks of our releasing this report in January, we saw the active vulnerabilities drop by 2/3. So the giving people data, having them be able to react to the data is paying off, and I think we're on a good path to significantly reduce our risk. So I just wanted to give you a quick update on that. Any questions?
I mean, Don, is it just really a question of raising awareness, or is it more than that?
Well, it's fairly complex. So a really good example is on vulnerabilities, where we finally feel that we've got a very good picture of the systems on our network and their vulnerabilities, and we would report a vulnerability to an IT director, and they would argue with us that that wasn't their system, and we would eventually be able to prove to them that it was their system. And so we have such a complex environment that a lot of people don't know what's on their network, don't know what they're responsible for, and therefore they weren't being attended appropriately. So we're to the point now where we have a pretty good picture and we can catch those. So, so awareness is probably a correct term, but I'm not sure it really encompasses what goes into understanding what is on our network with our complex environment and what its security posture is.
Right. Ted, did somebody, I think, started to ask a question, and I probably rudely interrupted. So sorry about that, whoever it was. I'll open it up for other questions. No. Okay, maybe I misheard. Okay. Thank you, Don.
All right, so the update on IT transformation. So starting really where the main objectives here, which is aligning our resources with the mission, right? Optimizing the university's investment and creating capacity. So as we continue to develop the plan, we've really identified really 3 pillars. 3 areas in which, we're really going to be focusing here over the duration of this initiative. So first, in the area of people, 3 significant areas of opportunity. The first is IT job redesign. So as an institution, we're dealing with IT job families from 2004. And just for point of reference, the iPhone was introduced in 2007. So I think that represents a significant opportunity for us as an institution, right, to ensure that we have the kind of talent that our faculty and our students need to run sort of modern IT systems. This really ties into the next piece of this, which is a workforce development. This is a fairly significant initiative to really understand what are the skills of the current workforce that we have at Penn State, what are the future skills that we really need to be mapping to, and what is a viable workforce strategy, right, to help sort of mature and ensure that the university has the kind of IT professionals to do the work that's required in 2019 and beyond. The last piece is an organizational design, right? Do we have the right design of IT across the university to be able to serve the needs into the future? And so we have a lot of significant work happening in this area. We're actually partnering with our colleagues in human resources. They had an HR summit this past week to bring all the HR strategic partners up to speed regarding the RIT initiative and how they can best be positioned to help support that effort moving forward. The next major area around reimagining IT at Penn State is process. And many of us have sort of heard the term, digital transformation. It's a bit of a buzzword in the industry right now, but essentially what it means is the modernization of business systems, and more importantly, it's really an application of what's called enterprise architecture, right? And changing from really what has historically been sort of an inside-out sort of thinking, whereas technologists, we would start with the technology and then figure out how it applies to support the business. Really what digital transformation implies is you actually start with the users. And what experience do you want them to take away from? And you work backwards through requirements and then eventually apply the appropriate technology. So that's a pretty fundamental shift in the way that IT will support the university moving forward. But that's a key component of this IT transformation. One of the things that we have to do, and I think, Walt, this goes to a question I think that we've had around sort of resources, is discovery and benchmarking. So we really don't know across the institution the resources that we have, both personnel and technology-wise, ensuring that we have a baseline before we sort of move through this effort that we can report against on sort of the progress that we've made in achieving those goals. The last is really sort of, this notion of continuous improvement. Joe and I were chatting earlier about, this notion of sort of change fatigue. And I think one of the more important messages that I think that we need to be able to emphasize to the university community is that in order to stay up to date with technology, how do we become adept at leading change, right, and introducing change to our university community in a way that is not so disruptive. The next pillar around RIT is really the technology piece, and we've talked traditionally about most of the opportunity here. Consolidation of technologies. We've seen good success up to this point with our move to Office 365. We've also seen movement with the consolidation of firewalls. Well, as we're sort of digging into this further, we're seeing examples of this kind of consolidation that's really been happening across the university. We've seen significant evidence of this in F&B, in outreach and World Campus. So our folks actually understand how to do this. Really what we're talking about is really scaling this and doing it at the university scale. The other significant part of this for technology is this notion of service management, right? How do we become a data-driven IT organization so that we're understanding, right, what are the pain points, if you will, for our users across the university community, and what are we doing to mitigate those pain points over time, whether it's an improvement to technology or better training or whatever insights we might gain as a result. So slide 11 really sort of puts sort of our target based on some external consultant work and some internal benchmarking. We're presenting basically what represents about 10% of sort of the known spend on IT across the university for potential realignment and sort of regaining some value. And we've identified some areas in which we've already realized some value, and we're also recognizing some areas that we believe will return significantly to the university community. The next slide really sort of demonstrates, the remaining amount that we're working to identify right now. Several areas that we're looking at right now is in commodity services, right, and really consolidating and aggregating services across the institution in the same way that we've done with Office 365. Digital transformation is really about helping the university realize capacity through more streamlined business processes. Looking at computer asset management, so we're leveraging our size and scale as an institution to get the kind of discounts that we need from our technology partners. And then, as I said, building in a culture of continuous improvement. So from our perspective as IT leaders, continuous improvement is the responsibility of everyone at the university, not just my office or our leaders. So as far as where we are with the program updates, I had a meeting with Madeline just earlier this week on the Commonwealth campuses. We're looking at some regionalization strategies there to really maximize the personnel that we have deployed to support the university across the Commonwealth. Changes in reporting structure, subsequent governance, and we're actually working with Barron and a cluster of campuses along the I-81 corridor to sort of test some of these regionalization concepts that Madeline and I have been talking about. David's team and F&B really have agreed to be sort of a vanguard, if you will, along with enterprise IT and really being the first two units to move into this new structure. And that will happen on July 1. So there's a lot of work behind the scenes right now to position what is essentially a merger, right, between those two units. And then the colleges, we have a number of partners identified to be able to help us through this process. I have a number of deans that are sort of sitting with me in an advisory capacity to help sort of inform some of the decision points that we have moving forward. And then just going ahead and jumping all the way to the last slide regarding next steps. So this is an ongoing set of conversations to identify areas representing the potential to move or to realign. My focus right now has really been on sort of the administration side of the university. We believe there's a tremendous amount of value there. And culturally, we believe it will actually help demonstrate to the colleges, right, that we can actually return the kind of value that we have been seeing within RIT. Tracking realized capacity, I think this is one of the lessons that we've learned in talking with our HR colleagues, is to really identify those targets and to report on those targets right throughout the duration of the project, so that we can track where we are with realized value. As I mentioned, working with HR, we're continuing to build out the senior leadership team. Same thing in relationship to resources. We have to have the right sort of senior leaders in place with the kind of capability that we need to lead this kind of large-scale change. So I continue to sort of build out the rest of that team. Hope to have them all in place by summer. We're establishing university-wide IT governance to help us ensure we're making sound investments in the future. We've assigned a dedicated team, including a Six Sigma black belt to kind of help us with reporting on some of the efforts. And in many ways, we're doing a lot of work behind the scenes and a lot of conversations to sort of overcome, I always say, sort of institutional inertia, right? This is a large, complicated university. There's a lot of work going on behind the scenes before we really move anything that's visible. I'm sure you can all appreciate, right, how much planning needs to go in before we begin executing. So happy to answer any questions.
All right, let me open it up to the committee first. Any questions? I have a question. You talk about institutional inertia, and then there's a slide in there that talks about our challenges, aging systems, silos, parochial thinking, complexity, those sorts of things. I mean, at the end of the day, to me, you got to have a tone at the top, and you got to have buy-in, or we won't go anywhere with this. And so, can you sort of address what that looks like right now?
Yeah, I think the one of the significant aspects of the change, Walt, is I'm talking to university leadership that no one is really disputing the need for change, and I think that's pretty significant, right? In an institution the size of Penn State, that leadership essentially recognizes that yes, there's a better way for us to do this. So let's all work together to kind of figure that out. I think that's a pretty significant development, to build on. Secondly is the vision, right? This notion of sort of aligning IT to support the mission. Same thing. No one is really sort of pushing back or disputing that. Optimizing our investments and really creating that capacity to be able to support, the innovation that's in our strategic plan and in Penn State 2025. So from my perspective, as far as where we are in the change, it's a good place to start. Having the right leadership in place and really moving these conversations through with deans and chancellors is a departure from the strategy that's been used in some other higher ed institutions. And I think we're actually getting a better return for where we are in the process right now.
When you say it's a departure, do you mean perhaps other institutions have just sort of taken for granted the buy-in and sort of jammed it down people, or we have a little bit more of a collaborative approach? Is that what you're sort of getting to?
Yeah, no, yeah, well, to a certain extent, yes. What I would argue is that in other institutions, this is tried to move through the IT management community, which, if you look at the hierarchy of the university, is middle management. Right, and so the strategy, in our perspective, is sort of flawed because middle management is really who should be executing the strategy. You really have to buy in amongst the deans and the vice presidents and the chancellors to really understand, this is a strategic decision, right, on behalf of the university, and getting sort of their alignment and buy-in, and then coming to middle management and say, look, we have our direction now. This is we need to execute against this vision.
Okay. I got it. Oh, that's good. Again, I'm going to open this up to the committee to see if anybody else has any questions on this. And Michael, great job.
Thank you. We've got a great team sort of working on this.
Not a question, only a comment. My compliments to the progress you're making. And just remember, we're here to help you if you need it.
Great. Thank you.
Great point, Ted. Yep, absolutely. Okay. Brandon, anything from you, or Don, anything you guys have?
I do not have any questions. Good job, Mike.
Yes. Thank you.
Nothing
Okay,
here, just to reiterate Ted's point that you guys are doing a great job, and it's an extremely complex and challenging endeavor that you're undertaking, and you're doing a good job executing.
Thank you.
I agree. Good. Then, if there's nothing else, Michael, and I think Don is also done. We appreciate your update, and we're going to turn this over. John Neary, I think you're on the line, who is the Deloitte partner, and I believe that you're going to give us the external audit, speak through to the engagement letter, I believe.
Actually, Walt, this is Joe. I was going to walk through this, and I think we were going to invite John to comment or kind of give his perspective.
Perfect.
So you have in your materials 2 engagement letters this year. The main engagement letter covers the entire waterfront, including fees and level and service level and scope of the audits, et cetera. There's actually an ancillary one that covers the university entities, and collectively Those would be the Ben Franklin Technology Center, the Penn State Research Foundation, Penn State Philanthropic Fund, Airport Passenger Facility Charge Audit, and the WPSU TV and FM radio audit. So those are covered because their unique aspects are actually have their own engagement letter, but everything is covered in the main engagement letter. And I gave an email earlier this week. I'm hoping you all received it. There was a lot of background information in there on historical fees and also benchmarking the Penn State engagement fees to peers in the Big Ten. I won't belabor all that detail, other than to say that this overall represents a total 3.3% increase over prior years in total fees. That 3.3 applies also to the University Consolidated Audit and the Uniform Guidance Compliance Audit, which is the A133 audit. And then the Penn State Health Audit is actually a 2.7% increase. As you know, we are transitioning, and as you mentioned, Walt, to John Neary being our primary engagement partner on the audit. The material is all in your Board Effect portal. And again, if there's any questions about any of the benchmarking or historical information I provided with respect to fees, I'm happy to take any questions. I think what we would like to do, I think this is your one action item of the agenda. And Walt, if you're okay, I'll quickly read into the record the resolution that we're asking you to entertain, and then maybe turn it over to John for anything he would want to add or any questions anybody has. The resolution we're asking you to consider is resolved that the officers of the university are authorized to engage Deloitte & Touche LLP, certified public accountants, for the audit of the accounts of the university for the year ending June 30, 2019. And that resolution would include all the entities that are covered in the main engagement letter.
Okay, great. Before I take a vote on that, John, I'll give you an opportunity to say whatever you would like to say.
Sure. I would just like to thank you for the opportunity to be part of the engagement on a go-forward basis. I reviewed, we put together the engagement letter in tandem with National Office Consultation, so it's ready to go. It looks pretty straightforward and consistent with prior years. I've had a few, one or two meetings with management, and I would say, it's a great team, and just really looking forward to the opportunity. I don't have a lot to mention on the engagement letter. As I said, Walt, it's pretty straightforward, but if you have any specific questions for me, happy to address those.
Okay. Does anybody on the committee have anything for John? Okay. So before we take a vote, just for the record, I want to remind the committee that we went out to bid last year and had several bidders for the Penn State audit, and we made the decision to retain Deloitte as the auditor for not just the consolidated audits, but all of the other audits that Joe mentioned. There was a fee reduction that came with that last year. We asked Deloitte to bid on a 5-year basis, even though technically we both have outs annually. I believe there's a very strong opinion that we all had that we would continue to use Deloitte, assuming their annual increases were reasonable. And I believe that the annual increase of just a little bit over 3% is, especially given the fee reduction that occurred last year. So I'll just throw it out to the committee if there's any other questions with respect to the fee arrangement, the engagement letter. Okay. Hearing
you got one second. You got Brandon here. As I'm looking through the benchmarking, I see that Deloitte, also did Minnesota, and I'm looking at Michigan State as well, and their overall expenses are significantly less, even if you take into account pulling out the medical school expense. Can you drive sort of what sort of differentiated sort of the Minnesota engagement versus the Penn State engagement?
Brandon, I don't know if John's prepared to answer that at this point. That was really our benchmarking exercise, just to management's benchmarking exercise to show to the board the different data points around the Big Ten, and I acknowledge that your information is correct. I would point out that Michigan State was done by more of a regional firm, and I think that's one of the main reasons there. I don't know that I can speak to the difference between Penn State and Minnesota, but if you'll look at all the data, we are in the middle of the pack, to the middle to lower end of the pack with respect to the audit fees at all the engagements, and maybe we would give John or Ed the opportunity to comment separately on, in a different forum around the Minnesota engagement, which may not have the same full scope as the Penn State engagement.
Yeah, I would need to look at that unless you have info, Ed.
I believe we looked at all of that last year whenever we went through this, and I'm sure it has something to do with the size of the schools. But nonetheless, I do think that if you guys could, take a look at that, and perhaps, Joe, maybe shoot the audit committee a response in regards to that. That would be great.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. And I understand that Penn State is a complex beast, and it's much larger and has Commonwealth campuses, and there's complexity around the audit. I just wanted to get some clarity on Deloitte versus Deloitte in those two schools.
That sounds good. We'll do it. Yep.
We can do that.
Okay. I'd like to ask if we could have a motion to approve the engagement for this year with Deloitte.
So moved.
So moved. All right. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye. Aye.
And I would just like to say, John, welcome aboard. We're really happy to have you. And Ed, I believe, Ed, you're on the call as well. And I think this probably signals that this may be your last audit. And I just want you to know how appreciative we are of all of your efforts with regard to Penn State over the course of, I don't know how many years, but a decent number of them. And so thank you for everything you've done, and it's been terrific working with you. Absolutely terrific.
Thank you, Walt.
Okay, I think we can, let me just ask Dan, is there anything else that I don't see at least, but that is on the agenda that needs to be covered today?
No, well, we're just up on the time. It's perfect timing, so we can adjourn. And then I think you all want to stay on the line for a private session.
Right, we'll just have a private session with Deloitte. And so, Jeannie, I think we're ready to end the public session.